Question 287. Your IT teams need to quickly locate resources associated with specific workloads, environments, ownership groups, or other important information. Which of the following can you recommend? And the options are A. Blueprints, B. Azure Security Center, C. Azure Advisor, D. Policies, E. Tags. And the correct answer is option E. Tags. Explanation. Organizing cloud-based resources is a crucial task for IT, unless you only have simple deployments. Use naming and tagging standards to organize your resources for the following reasons. Number 1. Resource management. Your IT teams need to quickly locate resources associated with specific workloads, environments, ownership groups, or other important information. Organizing resources is critical to assigning organizational roles and access permissions for resource management. Number 2. Operations management. Visibility for the operations management team about business commitments and SLAs is an important aspect of ongoing operations. For operations to be managed well, tagging for mission critically is required. Number 3. Security. Classification of data and security impact is a vital data point for the team when breaches or other security issues arise. To operate securely, tagging for data classification is required. Next question. Which of the following categories does Azure Kubernetes Service belong to? And the options are A. Database as a service, B. Platform as a service, C. Software as a service, D. Infrastructure as a service. And the correct answer is option D. Infrastructure as a service. Explanation. Remember that virtual machines, containers, and Kubernetes are considered compute services and fall under IaaS. Azure Kubernetes Service offers serverless Kubernetes, an integrated continuous integration and continuous delivery experience, and enterprise-grade security and governance. Unite your development and operations teams on a single platform to rapidly build, deliver, and scale applications with confidence. Next question. A startup has deployed a set of virtual machines which are critical for their day-to-day operations. They need to ensure their availability, even if a single data center goes down. An intern suggests deploying the virtual machines to at least 2 reasons. Would this suggestion meet the goal? Is it yes or no? And the correct answer is it's yes. Explanation. By deploying the virtual machines to 2 or more reasons, you are deploying the virtual machines to multiple data centers. This will ensure that the services running on the virtual machines are available if a single data center fails. Azure operates in multiple data centers around the world. These data centers are grouped into geographic regions, giving you flexibility in choosing where to build your applications. You create Azure resources in defined geographic regions like West US, North Europe, or Southeast Asia. You can review the list of regions and their locations. Within each region, multiple data centers exist to provide for redundancy and availability. Next question. Dash is Microsoft's cloud-based CM system. It uses intelligent security analytics and threat analysis. And the options are A. Azure Key Vault, B. Azure Sentinel, C. Azure Arc, D. Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And the correct answer is option B. Azure Sentinel. Explanation. Security management on a large scale can benefit from a dedicated security information and event management CM system. A CM system aggregates security data from many different sources, as long as those sources support an open standard logging format. It also provides capabilities for threat detection and response. Azure Sentinel is Microsoft's cloud-based CM system. It uses intelligent security analytics and threat analysis. Azure Sentinel enables you to collect cloud data at scale, collect data across all users, devices, applications, and infrastructure, both on-premises and from multiple clouds. Detecting previously undetected threats minimize false positives by using Microsoft's comprehensive analytics and threat intelligence. Investigate threats with artificial intelligence examines suspicious activities at scale, tapping into years of cybersecurity experience from Microsoft. Respond to incidents rapidly. Use built-in orchestration and automation of common tasks. Next question. Which of the following statements regarding Azure subscriptions are correct? And the options are: A. Azure subscription cannot have a trust relationship with an Azure Active Directory instance. B. Trial subscription can be converted to paid. C. Multiple subscriptions cannot be created within an Azure account. D. Subscription is dependent on a reason. E. Billing is applied to each subscription separately. And the answers are: B. Trial subscription can be converted to paid. D. Subscription is dependent on a reason. And option E. Billing is applied to each subscription separately. Explanation. Billing is applied to each subscription separately. Yes, it is one of the many reasons why people use separate subscriptions. Trial subscription can be converted to paid. Of course, when you sign up for an Azure free account, you get $200 credit. In the first 30 days, any services you use beyond their free amounts will be deducted from that $200 credit. When you have used up your $200 credit or 30 days have passed, whichever happens first, you will need to upgrade by moving to pay-as-you-go pricing. That way, you can keep getting free amounts of services and purchase services beyond their free amounts as needed. The cost of those services is charged to the payment method you provide. Subscription is dependent on a reason. Yes, when you create a subscription in Azure, you need to specify a certain reason for that subscription. Hence, this choice is valid as well. All other options are invalid and don't stand true. Next question. Dash provides disk for Azure virtual machines. Applications and other services can access and use them as needed, similar to how they would in on-premises scenarios. And the options are: A. File storage, B. Blob storage, C. Disk storage, D. SSD storage. And the correct answer is option C. Disk storage. Explanation. Disk storage provides disk for Azure virtual machines. Applications and other services can access and use these disks as needed, similar to how they would in on-premises scenarios. Disk storage allows data to be persistently stored and accessed from an attached virtual hard disk. Next question. Dash makes it easier to identify groups that generate the biggest Azure cost, which can help you adjust your spending accordingly. And the options are: A. Blueprints, B. Tags, C. Management groups, D. Policies. And the correct answer is option B. Tags. Explanation. Tags help you manage costs associated with the different groups of Azure products and resources. You can apply tags to group of Azure resources to organize billing data. For example, if you run several VMS for different teams, you can use tags to categorize cost by department, such as human resources, marketing or finance, or by environment, such as test or production. Tags makes it easier to identify groups that generate the biggest Azure cost, which can help you adjust your spending accordingly. Next question. You plan to deploy an SQL database to Azure. One of the major requirements is resource isolation. That is, this database should not be accessible to other resources on Azure. Which of the following can help with this? And the options are: A. Set up custom rules in Azure Blueprints, B. Set up custom rules in Azure Policies, C. Use an Azure Express Route circuit, D. Deploy the SQL database to a different virtual network. And the correct answer is option D. Deploy the SQL database to a different virtual network. Explanation. Deploying the SQL database to a different virtual network explains network segmentation. You can deploy the SQL database to a new virtual network and filter any traffic using a network security group on top of it. From the official Azure documentation, Azure Virtual Network (VNet) is the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. VNet enables many types of Azure resources, such as Azure virtual machines, to securely communicate with each other, the internet, and on-premises networks. VNet is similar to a traditional network that you'd operate in your own data center, but brings with it additional benefits of Azure's infrastructure such as the scale, availability, and isolation. Communicate between Azure resources. You will want to enable Azure resources to communicate securely with each other. You can do that in one of two ways. Number 1. Virtual networks. Virtual networks can connect not only VMS but other Azure resources, such as the App Service environment for Power Apps, Azure Kubernetes Service, and Azure Virtual Machine scale sets. Number 2. Service endpoints. You can use service endpoints to connect to other Azure resource type, such as Azure SQL databases and storage accounts. This approach enables you to link multiple Azure resources to virtual networks to improve security and provide optimal routing between resources. Filter network traffic. Azure Virtual Networks enable you to filter traffic between subnets by using the following approaches. Number 1. Network security groups. A network security group is an Azure resource that can contain multiple inbound and outbound security rules. You can define these rules to allow or block traffic based on factors such as source and destination IP address, port, and protocol. Number 2. Network virtual appliances. A network virtual appliance is a specialized VM that can be compared to a hardened network appliance. A network virtual appliance carries out a particular network function, such as running a firewall or performing wide area network optimization. Next question. Which of the following is an event-driven, compute-on-demand service with capabilities to implement code triggered by events occurring in Azure or third-party service as well as on-premises systems? And the options are A. Azure Machine Learning Studio, B. Azure Functions, C. Azure Cosmos DB, D. Azure Serverless, and the correct answer is option B. Azure Functions. Explanation. Azure Functions is a serverless solution that allows you to write less code, maintain less infrastructure, and save on cost. Instead of worrying about deploying and maintaining servers, the cloud infrastructure provides all the up-to-date resources needed to keep your applications running. You focus on the pieces of code that matter most to you, and Azure Functions handles the rest. Next question. A social insurance number and a fingerprint scan are valid MFA options for Azure. Is it yes or no? And the correct answer is no. Explanation. The following forms of verification can be used with Azure multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication provides additional security for your identities by requiring 2 or more elements to fully authenticate. These elements fall into 3 categories. Number 1. Something the user knows. This might be an email address and password. Number 2. Something the user has. This might be a code that's sent to the user's mobile phone. Something the user is. This is typically some sort of biometric property, such as a fingerprint or face scan, that's used on many mobile devices. Next question. Which of the following is not a computer service available in Azure? And the options are A. Azure Kubernetes, B. Azure Cosmos DB, C. Azure App Service, D. Azure Functions. And the correct answer is option B. Azure Cosmos DB. Explanation. Cosmos DB is a database and not a compute option in Azure. Azure offers a number of ways to host your application code. The term compute refers to the hosting model for the computing resources that your application runs on. The following flowchart will help you to choose a compute service for your application. If your application consists of multiple workloads, evaluate each workload separately. A complete solution may incorporate 2 or more compute services. Next question. A startup is planning to replace or supplement traditional on-premises network-attached storage devices. More importantly, they are looking for a solution that supports multiple operating systems and containerization. Which of the following would you recommend? And the options are A. Azure Kubernetes, B. Azure Files, C. Azure Container Instances, D. Azure Table Storage. And the correct answer is option B, Azure Files. Explanation. Azure Files offers fully managed file shares in the cloud that are accessible via the industry standard server message block protocol, network file system protocol, and Azure Files REST API. Azure file shares can be mounted concurrently by cloud or on-premises deployments. SMB Azure file shares are accessible from Windows, Linux, and Mac OS clients. NFS Azure file shares are accessible from Linux or Mac OS clients. Additionally, SMB Azure file shares can be cached on Windows servers with Azure File Sync for fast access near where the data is being used. Containerization. Azure file shares can be used as persistent volumes for stateful containers. Containers deliver built once, run anywhere capabilities that enable developers to accelerate innovation. For the containers that access raw data at every start, a shared file system is required to allow these containers to access the file system, no matter which instance they run on. Next question. Your legal team is requesting for documentation pertaining to Microsoft's implementation of controls and processes, namely audit reports, compliance scores, pen test and security assessments, and industry compliance. Where can you obtain this information? And the options are A. Azure Resources, B. Service Trust Portal, C. Azure Support Docs, D. Azure Advisor. And the correct answer is option B, Service Trust Portal. Explanation. The Microsoft Service Trust Portal contains details about Microsoft's implementation of controls and processes that protect our cloud services. Next question. As part of its modernization strategy, your company has decided to move all its operations to the Azure cloud. It is looking for an advanced modernization and optimization service for Azure with a wide range of tools for assessment. Which of the following would you recommend? And the options are A. Azure Data Box, B. Azure Advisor, C. Azure Migrate, D. Azure Cloud Adapter. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Migrate. Explanation. Azure Migrate provides a simplified migration, modernization, and optimization service for Azure. All pre-migration steps such as discovery, assessments, and right-sizing of on-premises resources are included for infrastructure, data, and applications. Azure Migrate's extensible framework allows for integration of third-party tools, thus expanding the scope of supported use cases. It provides the following. Number 1. Unified Migration Platform. A single portal to start, run, and track your migration to Azure. Number 2. Range of tools. A range of tools for assessment and migration. Azure Migrate tools include Azure Migrate, Discovery and Assessment, and Azure Migrate. Server migration. Azure Migrate also integrates with other Azure services and tools and with independent software vendor offerings. Next question. Which of the following options would meet these requirements? Number 1. SDKs for popular languages, APIs for SQL, MongoDB, Cassandra, and more. Number 2. Guaranteed speed at any scale with instant and limitless elasticity, fast reads, and multi-region writes anywhere in the world. Number 3. the ability to work with NoSQL data. And the options are A. Azure Table Storage, B. Azure Cosmos DB, C. Azure Files, D. Azure Queues. And the correct answer is option B. Azure Cosmos DB. Explanation. According to the official documentation, thank you for watching this video. Buy our AZ 900 premium questions with 50% off. Check link in the description.